Think back to the year 2000. You could walk into a fast food joint and get a burger for around $2. Today, that exact same burger will cost you closer to $6. The decay of our money gets even more obvious the further back you look. In the 1970s, 25 cents bought you a full cup of coffee. Today, if you tried to pay with a quarter, you wouldn't even have enough to buy the empty paper cup. If rising prices constantly erode our purchasing power, why do we tolerate it? Why don't governments just step in and force prices to stay exactly where they are? Or better yet, make things cheaper over time? A financial system that guarantees your everyday expenses will continuously climb feels like a massive scam. But that relentless upward pressure is actually a highly engineered safety net designed to keep the entire global economy from collapsing. This spectrum shows the Goldilocks zone. Central banks target inflation of 2 to 3%. They want your money to lose slightly in value each year. If that dial drops past zero into minus inflation, deflation, it triggers an immediate economic emergency. Deflation sets off a fatal chain reaction. When prices drop, businesses stop making money. To survive, those companies slash wages and lay off workers. Suddenly, everything in the store is cheaper, but nobody has a paycheck to buy anything. We have historical proof of how devastating this loop is. Massive deflation was the primary engine behind the U.S. Great Depression in the 1930s, leaving millions completely destitute. To prevent that kind of collapse, authorities need you to spend your money today. And the only mathematical way to force that behavior is to ensure your cash will buy slightly less tomorrow. A steady 3% decay keeps the economy breathing. But what happens when external forces push inflation past that upper limit? The first culprit is demand pull inflation. If a tornado wipes out a massive corn crop, the supply shrinks. You suddenly have a desperate crowd of buyers competing for a tiny amount of food, and they willingly bid up the prices to secure what they need. Then there's cost push inflation. If the raw ingredients required to make a bag of popcorn suddenly get more expensive, the manufacturer won't just eat that loss. They pass the increased cost directly to you at the grocery store to protect their profit margins. This quickly feeds into built-in inflation. As the cost of living climbs, workers demand higher wages to survive. Companies pay those higher salaries, but then raise their product prices again to cover their newly inflated payroll. The fourth force comes straight from the top, the money supply. When a government prints and injects too much cash into the economy, people have more money to spend on a limited number of goods. The overall value of every single dollar gets diluted. Left unchecked, these forces escalate into hyperinflation. This is the scenario where average prices surge by more than 50% every single month. Look at Venezuela. Years of aggressive money printing caused their currency to lose value by the hour. A stack of cash that could buy a loaf of bread in January couldn't buy a crumb by December. The national currency literally became street trash. To prevent our money from ending up in the gutter, two major authorities step in to pull inflation back from the brink: central banks and the government. Central banks, like the Federal Reserve, control the first lever, monetary policy. Their primary tool is adjusting the country's interest rates. When inflation runs hot, central banks raise interest rates. Loans become more expensive, shrinking cash circulating in public hands. They also use open market operations. Central banks sell bonds to commercial banks in exchange for cash, deliberately draining money out of the economy. While central banks squeeze the money supply, the government handles the second lever, fiscal policy. If the economy is overheating, lawmakers can intentionally hit the brakes. They might raise your taxes so you have less disposable income, or abruptly halt massive public infrastructure projects, freezing the cash that would have gone to construction companies and engineers. Working together, these institutions act as a massive thermostat. They intentionally suffocate economic activity just enough to prevent hyperinflation, while carefully avoiding the fatal freeze of a deflationary spiral. The government tells us if the thermostat works by tracking the Consumer Price Index, or CPI. It's a rough average of how much everyday goods and services change in price over a year. But this chart reveals the CPI's mathematical illusion. It averages critical goods, like bread, milk, and eggs, with non-essentials, like candles and movie tickets. If groceries spike 10 The official target zone is a macroeconomic necessity for a functioning country, but it actively masks a much harsher reality for your personal wallet. Because the system is built on a mandatory continuous decay of at least 2%, any money sitting idle in a piggy bank or a standard savings account is mathematically guaranteed to lose its purchasing power. Take a look at this bar chart comparing 3 approaches over a 10-year span. Bob invested $1,000 in stocks, Jack bought gold, and Tony used a basic savings account. On paper, all 3 gained money, but subtracting the 2% inflation penalty reveals the truth. Bob and Jack stayed profitable, while Tony's basic interest drove his purchasing power negative. This is why many look to physical assets as a defensive hedge. Because things like gold have a strictly limited physical supply, they are immune to central banks printing more of them, holding their value when paper money dilutes. The global economy is engineered to perpetually erode the value of the dollar. In this environment, consistent investment is the mandatory baseline for financial survival.